It took us 9 years to close it.
9 years.
9 years to close the deal.
Oh my God.
When we're doing infrastructure, we're looking at the need. The last time they changed the equipment was about 15, 20 years ago. So the lighting system was not working. The place was infested with rats, eating the cables. So the need was there. Can you provide the solution? And we could provide the solution. So looking at these 3 or 4 elements, we said, well, one day this will happen.
And you were still holding on to
We did our very best, to the point that sometimes when you're going to GBC for a meeting, you meet some of the engineers, then they will ask you, where's the Sony package? Where's the Sony package? The Lord God made it happen. We put in a lot of energy to make sure that it happened, and it did happen. And we're very excited about it. GBC needed to be overhauled, So we did 3 television stations and 16 radio stations across the country.
Some leaders build companies, others help shape nations. Akwasi Aboagye Atuah stands firm at the intersection of both. For decades, as a Chief Executive Officer of Lifeforms Limited, he has led with vision and precision, driving strategic infrastructure and development projects that have had lasting impacts across Ghana and the West African sub-region. From advancing rural electrification to supporting the transformation of national broadcasting systems, his work has quietly powered progress on a national scale. His influence cuts across industries, from media and film to energy, logistics, and large-scale project financing. With a rare ability to bring together global partnerships, funding, and execution, he has consistently turned complex ideas into tangible outcomes. But beyond the boardroom and project sites is a leader deeply committed to service, championing social and economic development through initiatives that uplift communities and strengthen institutions. A builder of systems, a connector of opportunities, and a driver of long-term impact. His journey reflects leadership rooted in purpose. Today, we step into the real-life executive diary of Akwasi Aboagye Atuah.
Welcome to the Red Podcast, Real Life Executive Diaries, a CEIBS Ghana alumni initiative. My name is Dedo Kofi, and I'm going to be your host for this episode. Today, I am joined by Mr. Akwasi Aboagye Atuah. Mr. Atuah, it's such a pleasure to have you with us on the Red Podcast. I know you as Major, so I know it's a conversation we are going to have soon. So thank you so much for joining us. When we were going to have this conversation and I got your CV and your profile, I was like, wow, this man has so much depth. And I don't know how we're going to cover all in 30 minutes, but we'll try and do that and give our listeners the best. But what I want you to start this conversation with is to tell us that, we've read so much about you, but beyond all these titles, what would you say, or who would you say that you are? Beyond all the titles, who would you say that you are?
Well, thank you very much, but I don't even know what to say. You and Dorothy, you've cornered me to do this interview. Yeah. I don't remember the last time I went on to be interviewed.
Oh, wow.
But because of CEIBS, and also life lessons, I think that is important that we share some of these things.
We're excited.
So in short, I believe in creativity. I believe in family. I believe in God Almighty, And I try as much as possible to do my best. I'm a human being, but so there are a few, hiccups here and there. But who I am, I think I'm a true son of God. I'm a family person. I'm married to my beautiful Anna Atuah, and I have 4 rascals children.
Wow, rascal.
The real rascals. They are royal pain in the
Girls,
backside.
boys.
I have 2 boys and 2 girls.
Okay, that's
Yes.
lovely. So many rascals. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so that's who you are at the core. That's great to hear. So, what would you say matters to you? I mean, more than it did 10 years ago. Because you know that question, when you are asked, "Who are you?" Sometimes you're tempted to say, I'm a lawyer," or "I'm this." But it's interesting how you put it. So, what matters to you now than it mattered to you maybe 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago in your life?
No, I think what is important for everybody and for me especially, is all about integrity and your name. You know, unfortunately, we're human beings, so like I said, once in a while you will slip, but it won't be deliberate. But name is very important.
I like that. We'll come back to that in a bit. But right now, I want to, because I'm very excited to talk about some of the things that you did many years ago. Because I loved 227. I loved Different Strokes. I loved to watch it. And to know that you were the brain behind some of us being able to see it, it's very laudable. And so what I want to find out is, I mean, you began film production and directing. So what drew you to all of the storytelling media, and then also, I don't know whether to call it media buying or bringing these things into Ghana?
It's interesting, after graduating from NAFTI, I decided to go back to the US to do a master's program. So I went to USC, and in talking to the dean, he said, look, you'd be better off if you go back home and do something with your time first before, like get industry experience, before coming back to do a master's program, And in my days in Ghana, you don't watch majority of the sitcoms apart from Avenue A and everything. So in going to the States, then I was totally exposed to Cosby Show, 227, you name them, the sitcoms, different types of sitcoms and different titles. So I said to myself, well, this might be interesting for Ghana. So I started the research, to bring these things to Ghana. Every film company is in 3 parts. You have the production company, you have the distribution company, and then you have the exhibition company. So the exhibition companies are the theaters that we go to.
Okay.
And then the distribution companies are those that the theaters buy from. So to buy a program, you have to go through the distributors. So that's how you do it. And then also in terms of pricing, the pricing per film, is based on jurisdiction. You look at the economy of the market. The U.S. is the biggest economy. So their prices are higher than what you pay for in Ghana. So for instance, you may buy an episode of Cosby Show for $3 million, something like that. But then they sold it to me, or we negotiated for $150 per episode.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So how were you able to, did you do this all by yourself, or you went with the team?
No, initially, I went by myself.
Okay.
And I remember I have a friend of mine who used to work on the Wall Street, so I had gone to visit him, and we're talking about this. He said, so what are you coming to do in America? And we're talking. I said, oh, well, I'm negotiating to buy the Cosby Show. And then he started laughing. He said, well, you buy a Cosby Show? Do you know the price? Well, he's a finance person. I'm not, but I understood the business because it's not his business. So then he was really surprised that in the end we were able to bring Cosby and others.
That's a very audacious move, I must say.
Wow.
So let me ask that, looking back, because throughout all of this, you would have worked with a lot of people and you would have done business with people. Because most of the people listening are actually leaders who are listening in to learn from your wealth experience, what would you say this whole chapter or this this whole thing taught you about people and business?
Reflecting, looking at my life now and looking at that then, when I started, I wasn't a Rotarian, but some of the things that, I try to hold dear to, like I talked to you about, name, it's important. But looking at this gentleman called, Jay Taylor, who was the managing director of Aluminium Distribution Company, was called to CEIBS, another company which was going bankrupt. And he developed a four-way test.
Four-way test.
Yes, which is the mantra for Rotarians.
Okay.
The first thing is, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Sometimes I mess them up a little bit.
Okay.
But this is what he used in saving the company. So you try to practice that. Once again, you're a human being, so there will be some lapses. So that taught me a lot. To be fair to my friends, to be honest with my friends, and to be honest in trade and business as well.
I like that because it takes us back to what you had mentioned earlier on integrity.
Yeah.
And so what I'm picking from all of this is that integrity is so important.
It is.
When you're dealing with people, when you're working with businesses, because your name is at stake, right? I love that. Right, okay. So after doing all of this, at a certain point, you decided that you were going to reinvent Lifeforms. From program syndication into infrastructure. So did you do it alongside, or did you decide to just switch over? And what was that like as a business? Because as entrepreneurs, sometimes we have a whole lot of ideas. How do we move from one idea to the other? Must one mature, or something would come up and you have to seize the opportunity? How did you navigate that, and what would you say to anybody with multiple ideas like me sitting right in front of you?
So, doing distribution for Warner Brothers, Columbia Pictures, and Sony gave birth to an opportunity because at the time that we were bringing these programs to Ghana, the format at a television station for GBC was analog. Okay, that's what they were transmitting on. While the world was going digital or serial digital. So serial digital, you'll be able to play the two programs, those that are recorded in analog and those that are recorded in serial digital. But GBC didn't have that and had analog, all right? But then the world was changing, everybody was going to the digital side. So any program that we were bringing at the time, we needed to reformat it to serial digital. Okay, to analog, from digital to analog. So that gave us an opportunity that GBC needed to be overhauled. They have 3 television stations, studios. They have 16 radio stations. And those days, it was only GBC. So because I work with Sony Pictures as well, as one of that gave us the opportunity to talk to Sony, to say that, look, why don't you come in and rehabilitate the studios? And Sony bought the idea. It took us 9 years to close it.
9 years?
9 years to close the deal.
Oh my God. And you were still holding on to
We did our very best, to the point that sometimes when you're going to GBC for a meeting, you meet some of the engineers, then they will ask you, where's the Sony package? Where's the Sony package? But, the Lord God made it happen. So we did 3 television stations and 16 radio stations across the country.
That's what you call the analog digital.
So we rehabilitated. So we brought them new cameras, and then we changed the format to serial digital. So if you have materials in analog, you can still play. If you have materials in digital, you can still play. So that's what we left for GBC.
Okay, so that's what you mean by it actually gave birth to a new opportunity.
Exactly. So that's purely infrastructure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then we said, there's some money to be made here.
In that side as well.
Yes.
Okay. Because now we're talking about it, I mean, it's happened because you waited 9 years.
Yeah.
I'm sure in that period, because in that period, there will be a lot of things that look messy and you would even second guess yourself. What kept you holding on? And I mean, in answering that, is there any opportunity that you probably were pursuing and you had to give up on it? And what made you so sure that you should give up on it or hold on and still keep pushing?
You know, I mean, basically, when we're doing infrastructure, we're looking at the need. You see what I mean? Does GBC really need a new system? And that was very, very clear, that the equipment, the last time they changed the equipment was about 15, 20 years ago. So the lighting system was not working. The place was infested with rats, eating the cables. So the need was there. And then the second part is that, can you provide the solution? And we could provide the solution. So you have the world's number one, electronic company, Sony, which have the solution. And the third was that, would you find the money to be able to do it? And Sumitomo Bank, which has been Sony's bankers for years, were ready and prepared to do it. So it was just a conversation with the authorities, your government, to see the need. And fortunately, politically, at the time, GBC was the only station, that they could use. So looking at these 3 or 4 elements, we said, well, one day this will happen. Okay. And I also didn't want to do it and stop and start something else, so we're putting a lot of energy to make sure that it happened. And it did happen. And we're very excited about it.
I like how you put it in 3 phases, because it's helping me actually think through, okay, this thing that I'm doing, is there a real need in the market for it?
Exactly.
And can I provide the solution? The third point is the money, the financing of it. And I know that for especially a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, not if you work a 9 to 5, finance is one of the things that people worry about a lot, how to finance their idea or how to finance when they were trying to scale up. What is your take on financing for any business person? When it's right to finance, how do you prepare yourself for financing, and what are some of the things you should look out for or you should do? Because it can also stifle you, because you go and take money and then it becomes a curse rather than a blessing.
As I said earlier, the need is very important. It has to be strong, and you have to be very honest to yourself, because you can come up with just any project and say that people need this or government need this, but then, really they don't. So that's number one. Okay, so you have to be very sure that there's the need, because that's what drives everybody. And then number 2, who can provide that solution? And that person has to have the capacity to be able to do it. I always tell my friends that, look, there's no lack of money for projects, but there's lack of good projects to finance. Because if you don't package it well, nobody's going to read it, nobody's going to understand. But if you do package it well, then you get funding for it. We did another project with US Exim Bank for rural electrification. At the time, in 2008, I think, towns connected to the grid, in terms of electricity, was about 40%. Okay, so majority of towns, and towns are defined as any area with 500 population. That's how they defined it. So there was the need to scale up to make sure that we'll have more connectivity. So we worked with US Exim Bank and look at the scope of what we can do, and we scale it up because they were doing it in phases. They call it Rural Self-Help Electrification Project, SHEP. So they did phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So we met the phase 4. And then the program was to do this in 15, 20 years. But then we put in the needed capital, and it was done in 5 years. And then we moved from 40% to about 70%. So we have to be honest to ourselves in terms of determining, what kind of project we want to get into, whether there is real need for the project.
Thank you very much. I like that.
Thank you.
I want us to move into, your leadership, because as an entrepreneur, I see that you actually have served across boards and different sectors. So how did you become someone who people will come to and say, come and serve on boards? Because also looking at the entrepreneurial scene, most entrepreneurs are running around trying to fix a lot of problems, and you do that your whole entire life. I sort of think, that's my thinking, that people come to sit on boards because they have solutions to certain needs. And so how did you position, if you positioned yourself at all to be that kind of person, and how can entrepreneurs also beef up their leadership expertise so that, because sometimes you can have the expertise, but you are not even positioned for anybody to approach you to say, come serve on a board?
Some of the boards that I've served on came as being a shareholder.
Right.
Okay. Which was very good for me, and I learned a lot. I think my first board appointment or position was with Prudential Bank, okay, which I was a shareholder. I'm still we're still shareholders. But at the time, I didn't have any background in banking. I didn't have any background in finance. But I must say a big thank you to Mr. J. Azado, the former governor, who was a chair of Prudential Bank, and Mr. Setra Bankwa, who later became the MD of Prudential. They taught me a lot.
Right.
They taught me a lot and put me on a lot of committees. So my little knowledge in finance came from serving on the bank. And that also helped me to do the infrastructure that I was doing. It helped me to be able to talk to the likes of US Exim Bank and, Korean Exim Bank. So with SIC Life, I was appointed, And in terms of leadership, one of the things that I realized is that the position of a leader and what the leader says or his actions can be extremely dangerous. And therefore, every leader should exercise a lot of caution and patience in taking a decision. So on the board at SIC, I make sure that every single member will have his turn to speak.
Right.
Give everybody the opportunity to speak. And if there's a matter that I think we should put it to vote, I put it to vote. I've never been a dictator on any of the boards. And sometimes we'll even phrase the agreement for the secretary. And I'll ask everybody if this is what reflects what we've all agreed on. So you have to give people the space. And then also, to be an effective board member, read your board pack. Because the experience that I got from that is majority of the people don't read their board pack, and they'll come and sit in the boardroom not reading their board pack. So when you're talking about something, they're not even aware. So read your board pack. Don't speak too soon. Listen to others before you speak.
Great. My notes are all over the place. This is really insightful, and I want you to tell us one leadership lesson that you learned the hard way.
You know, I'm glad for this question. You know, I am. I sort of give up myself, and I trust and believe in people. But you know, as Bob Marley said, you know, you get hurt, people will hurt you. You know, and if you're a leader, don't concentrate on the hurt. Concentrate on the matter, what the issue is, and deal with it. You know, because your head and emotions won't solve the problem. You know, and yes, you can get angry with people, but don't prolong it. Okay, cut it and address the issue.
Mr. Chair, I think I want to delve deeper into, what you just talked about. That's the one leadership lesson that you learned the hard way, because you were talking about trusting and believing in people. And this conversation, I know it's something that comes up a lot, especially when you're having to manage people. And so how do you differentiate? Because if you have a certain personality and trusting and believing in people, how do you try and draw a line so that doesn't become a problem with your leadership style or leading your team? Because you know that people can take advantage of that. So how do you draw a line? And then, as much as leading people comes with so many different things, you want that trait to sort of help you lead the people, but at the same time, it's like a blessing and a curse. So how do you manage that?
Well, you know, you manage this based on certain experiences. You see what I mean? And like all human beings, you do something, then you come back, you sit down, and you said, on hindsight, I shouldn't have done it this way. Do you get my point? So that's where you pick up the lessons. So if it's going to happen again, then you are more or less informed by what happened earlier.
Right.
You see? So that should be your guide. You know, if this probably will be a very minor example. If you give your friend comes to you and says, "Oh, can you give me 10 CDs? I'll pay tomorrow." And you give him the 10 CDs and he doesn't come back. And another friend comes, what do?
You don't want to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so that's a
it
lesson.
affects.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. But sometimes maybe that friend actually needs it.
Unfortunately, that's what it is. You know, so you take a lesson from that, and then maybe you won't do 10, but you do 5.
And that one, you know, if it doesn't come back.
You know.
It's a lesson I've personally learned. So. I'm glad I'm not alone. Right. Major.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we go into that? Why do people call you Major?
You know,
I actually thought you were a major.
So, in terms of people in my life that I'll forever appreciate, of course, my parents, you know, and then my big brother. You know, my big brother, Atuah, is my everything. And the love of my life, my dear wife, Anna, you know, pretty Anna. But it's my big brother who gave me this title.
Major, okay.
Major. He was reading a book, and he said there was a character in the book called Major. And his full name was Major Holland.
Okay.
So it became my nickname. At the time I was young. So when I was growing up, I got to the age of, looking like a major. So then people started wondering whether indeed I went to the army. And sometimes I'll joke and lie to them. I said, yeah. I went to West Point, Said, what were you doing there? I said, war strategies.
actually thought until
No,
now
I'm not. I'm
you
not
were
a
a
major.
major. So it has nothing to do
No,
with the
no,
army.
no.
Okay.
But my father's business was arms and ammunition, so at least I know how to fire a gun.
All right.
Yeah,
I
but
would
those
like
are
to-
the hunting
I
ones,
want
not
to learn.
sure. Those are the hunting ones,
Okay, so
not
I'll take you up on it.
please.
So what keeps you grounded, Major? What keeps you grounded? I mean, we've had this conversation and I see that you are strong in your convictions, in focused on what you want to achieve. What keeps you grounded as a person?
It's a combination. I mean, if it's business, it's like I said, whatever you're working on, make sure that there's a real need, an honest need for it before you even tackle it. It's not a question of let's just go and make a few bucks. Okay, so once you know that you are serving society, you are providing solution, you know, it's a different thing altogether. I remember some of these projects that we did with the Shop 4. People haven't seen electricity before. They have never used it. And then all of a sudden, boom.
Right.
And when I was brought up in a Semankasi, we didn't have electricity in our house. They had a generator because it wasn't linked to the grid. But we were always buying kerosene and then the lamps. Then finally they increased the generator so we could have electricity in our home. And it was such a total difference from the lamp to electricity. So me as a boy, I enjoyed that. So I carry this with me, in the same way that we did the Shop 4 project. I carry this with me when we're doing Sunyani water, that if we can provide water to the people of
It
Sunyani.
wasn't just business.
No,
as
it wasn't
usual.
just
it
business.
was meeting
No,
a need.
no.
A real need.
You have to meet the needs,
Okay, just to wrap up on this discussion around your leadership, is there something that you think people misunderstand about leaders that maybe you would want to speak to leaders so that they are not overly worried about it, that it's okay? People misunderstand you as a leader in this light or in that light.
Well, first of all, we as leaders have to bear in mind that, we are leaders because of our level of knowledge. We are leaders because we have certain qualities and properties. Okay. But then the other people that you are dealing with are nowhere near that. And therefore, you should try as much as possible to come to their level. So that's number one for me, And always as a leader, like I said, put a human face to whatever it is that you're doing. Listen to the other side. Because people have the tendency to lie. Listen to the other side. Solely because you as a leader, one word from you can end somebody's life. One word from you can sack somebody from work. I was reading a book by John Grisham, his recent book, I've forgotten the title, but he selected 10 cases in America that people who have been falsely jailed, and one of them actually was killed, was executed for crimes that they didn't commit. And they went into jail for 40, some of them went 20 years, 30 years, for crimes that they didn't commit. Just because a leader, a police officer comes in and says, this is what happened. And that was gospel.
That's deep.
Yeah.
That's really
10
deep.
stories. And then these are real stories.
So whatever we do is really important.
We have to be very careful.
Yeah.
We should always listen to the other side. We should always listen. Because you see, if you don't go to the other side, you won't know what is happening. You assume, I tell you a little joke. There was this lady that years ago, before I got married, that I was going out with. And I went to pick her up in the house. So when she sat in the car, she said, "Oh, Major, Mommy was asking me who I'm going to get married to." Then I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Oh, what about Major?" He said, "Oh, Major hasn't said anything." And this lady friend of mine's mother's friend Said, oh, no. Major is a drunkard. He drinks and he falls in gutters. And I didn't even drink. I wasn't drinking.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So we have to be as, this is an elderly
Even like
woman.
as
She's a leader.
parents, as
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful what
we
we listen from people or what we say about people.
and today she would have been here.
Well, I don't think my wife would be too happy to hear that.
We love mommy.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's just lessons. That's
No,
really
it is.
deep. I mean, it's got me thinking, and I am sure that our viewers, our listeners will have that as a food for thought. Really, it's so deep. If there's anything I'm taking away from all of it, is the fact that as a leader, whatever your inaction or action can be the cause of somebody's end. Okay, so you're obviously a CEIBS alumni, and so you did some executive education with CEIBS. And what did that do for you? And what would you say to leaders who either take executive education seriously or not in their journey?
So to be very blunt, film studies is not very common. How many people in Ghana actually did film? Okay. So you're sort of handicapped in your business, in your day-to-day business. And it's real, because there are certain things that you won't understand and all of that. But like I said, I was fortunate to serve on a bank's board. So I learned a lot from there. And of course, people are looking at your CV or film school, So CEIBS came in very, very handy. I remember when Professor Atuah came to recruit me, he said, look, it's 18 months. You do 1 month every other month, And that was a lie, though.
So
That was a complete lie. Yeah. But he sold me on that. I said, okay, so I'll do a class 1 month. The following month, I'm free.
Can relate.
But the month before we went to class, which lasted for 12 days, the amount of material that you're given before you come to class, okay, case studies, if I'm not exaggerating, you probably will read about 300 pages before you go to your next class. Yeah. And then when you leave that month class, you have assignments that you have to do, and then you have to read another to get ready, So it was intense. But I can tell you that I am not somebody who can sit for a long time. But at CEIBS, even when I have to get up to go and use the bathroom, I didn't want to go because the lectures were that interesting. I didn't want to go. Yeah. I mean, the first week was tough though, but after that, it was really, really good. And, meeting other people from Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and then going to Shanghai to continue the class. CEIBS has a fantastic campus. It was really an eye-opener. And the whole story surrounding CEIBS, how they even built the campus, the world's leading architect who did it for free. So it was well thought out plan. So I enjoy every bit of it, and then we'll have our dinners after every session, and it was good.
Yeah.
And I made good friends, so it's good.
Okay. So one word, one sentence to anybody who is thinking about doing an executive education, what would you say to them?
Education is non-negotiable. If you have the opportunity, do it. Even if you don't have the opportunity, look for it and do it.
I like that. Look for it and do it.
You bet.
Before I ask you my last question, I just want to say, is there something you would like to share that maybe I haven't touched on, which you believe in your heart is important to put out there?
I mean, the only thing that I repeat is that, when you have issues, deal with the issues. Don't let it linger. And, don't let it linger for a long time. Deal with it and manage your anger, Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. So my final question is, what would you want to be remembered for?
What do I want to be remembered for? You know, that some of the projects that we did really did solve problems, that we brought solutions
Right.
to some of the projects that we did or that we're doing. That's all.
Okay, then beyond business.
Beyond business, continuing to practice Christianity
Okay.
and be the father and the husband of the family,
Okay.
which is not negotiable.
I love that. Okay. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Major. I love Major. Major Atuah, not Major Holland. Thank you so much, Major. It's
Well,
been
the
a
two of
pleasure.
you are in trouble, you know.
Are we? We are, right? But I think we are privileged to have had you on here, and hats off to Dorothy for making this possible.
Thank
But
you.
we're truly grateful. This has been so insightful, and I have truly learned from you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For giving us the honors to interview you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening in to the Red Podcast, a CEIBS Ghana alumni initiative. Share, like, and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you on the next episode.